Welcome to Women in B2B Marketing, a show where CMOs, VPs of marketing, and all strong women leaders in B2B discuss their top tactics, strategies, and tips for building high-performing teams, leveraging trends, and ultimately rocking their marketing careers. Made by and for women, insightful for all. I'm your host and 15-year B2B marketer, Jane Serra. Let's dive in. Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for joining us today for an episode of Women in B2B Marketing. I have been trying to get our guest today on the show for a long time. It's been so hard to get us to connect, but she's wonderful and you will love today's episode. I guarantee it. We have the wonderful Gina Rau, who is the global head of PR and communications at 6 Sense. So I'm sure many of you have followed her already on LinkedIn. If you do not, you should. She has over 20 years of experience in all things marketing, comms, PR. She is going to give us a masterclass today or at least touch the surface of it, of PR and comms. And I'm so pumped to have you here. Finally, we made it happen, Gina. Welcome to the show.
It happened. And I am totally blushing by that introduction, Jane. Thank you.
Oh, I'm really so excited. Selfishly, I wanted to have you on the show just to pick your brain, which we'll talk about later.
Yes,
about so much. So I always start out on each episode hearing a little bit about your career path, your journey to where you are today. So if you could walk us through how you got to your position at 6 Sense and the magical world of PR and B2B.
Oh my gosh, it looks like a bowl of spaghetti. My career has not had like a linear path by any means. And I want to say it started when I was in high school and I worked at Disneyland. I was in the entertainment department, literally like bringing stories to life for Disney guests and learned the power of storytelling and how at the time I didn't know things like how our brain is wired to like tune in and really listen and connect with stories. But I saw what happened, when Snow White would tell a story and kids' faces would just light up. There was something really magical. When I graduated college, I had dreams of working on Madison Avenue, big advertising agency, maybe not big advertising agency, but I did work on a few different brands like McDonald's and Taco Bell during really fun days and just doing everything within marketing. Loved all that we learned about the consumer side of marketing and what compels and incents someone to take some action. Through a lot of the agencies I worked at, I learned things like how to write a brief and the importance of the creative brief. I have to say the teams I've led over the years have laughed. I'm a big fan of the creative brief and how it helps you focus. But after we moved to Portland, Oregon, and I was working on the agency side in consumer, and I realized I live in Portland, Oregon. And if I'm not going to work at Nike, I better learn some tech. And thankfully, I was recruited on the tech side and moved into B2B and tech and would literally sit in the underground levels with the engineers and listen to them talk about things like APIs and HTMLs and I don't even know what else. And I watched
the acronyms.
Yeah, I was like, what does that mean? Tell me about this API thing. And they were so patient and gracious with me. But I really enjoyed the different problems and challenges on the B2B side. And the second company I worked with that was a technical company on the B2B side, I was hire 45. We had zero awareness. And the challenges that we faced were so fun and different. I really enjoyed that. Over the past, I don't even know how many years, working in different marketing positions and roles on the tech side has just been, I don't know, it's been like an adventure.
Yeah.
I love it.
And we were talking about how basically the marketing world covers so many, it's basically a huge umbrella covering a million different things under marketing. We end up, especially at the smaller companies, when you're just starting out, you're doing everything. What got you into the PR and communications, the comms hats, to be wearing those?
So when I was looking for my most recent move, I really sat and I reflected on all of the things that I've done in marketing over the course of my career. And I came back to storytelling. And I sought out to really focus. I've done it all, but I really love messaging and positioning and storytelling. And so when I was out looking for my next opportunity, I told Latney, who was our CMO at the time, I really just want to do this. I want to do messaging, positioning, communication, storytelling. That's really all I want to do. And she said, that is perfect. That's all I need you to do.
Wow.
So it was a win.
The stars aligned. What have you learned coming into this segment, right? PR and comms, especially at such a big company that has so much attention on it. What have you learned coming from marketing that all marketers should know, but now you've learned the hard way, like owning it?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's a really good question.
Oh, you can think on it. No pressure. I threw this one out.
You surprised me with that one. I think my first instinct was to say every marketer needs to know how to write and communicate and tell a story, regardless of your role. AI is changing. AI is changing that quickly. And I don't know how much better ChatGPT and all the tools that we use today, how much better they're going to be at sounding and feeling like a human, because they are going to get better. But we still need to communicate with each other. We can't delegate everything to our AI agents. We can delegate a lot. They're getting smarter, more intelligent, faster, better at their roles. But we still need to communicate. I think everyone in business needs to have those skills, but particularly in marketing, because we have to be able to translate a lot to the external world. And if we don't get it right, if we don't enable our sales and customer success teams, right, things are going to start falling apart, the cracks start to show.
Yeah, it's so true. Do you, owning the communications and the storytelling behind things, do you work collaboratively with all of the teams at Sixth Sense on the marketing side, and probably even beyond marketing, right? With the storytelling, sales, and what don't you touch?
I chuckled inside when I heard you say like own storytelling, because I think it's a collaborative effort at Sixth Sense and probably most organizations, who owns storytelling. Hopefully everyone does. Hopefully everyone can tell our story about who we are and how we benefit our customers. Yes, we work with almost every organization across the company to understand the product, to understand the market, to understand our customers and how they're getting value, to enabling everyone, getting those stories out there. We work with everyone across the organization, which I love. Sometimes I find myself in these meetings or I'll mention names across the organization and other people say, who is that? Like, you should know them.
Yeah. Great. You can become a connector internally and introduce people to different. Yeah, that's great. And do you also, speaking of storytelling, not being owned by one person, totally get that. Do you often in these conversations get stories and story ideas from just talking to different teams and seeing what conversations are coming up on sales calls or with customers? And where do you get these ideas from?
Everywhere. They are everywhere. When I hire for my team, I tell people that we have an abundance problem. We have so many great stories to tell. We have so many customers who have raised their hand and said, I'd like to tell my story of success. I'd like to talk about how my team did this and the other thing and how they're thriving, they're contributing, they're reaching unbelievable achievements. It is not every PR team situation where they have an abundance of stories. And then you have to figure out, okay, what do I do with all these stories? Where is the right placement? Who should we be pitching these stories to? What should be in media versus a podcast versus a blog post or a social media story? What do we do with all these stories? I feel very fortunate to be in this situation where we have an abundance of stories. We also had really great partnerships with like our customer marketing team, our product marketing team, our product team, all the different teams. So they are just bringing us stories. It's a very fortunate situation to be in.
Yes, I love that. So 2 questions come to mind right away is, where do you store all of these stories? And how do you prioritize?
You would laugh at all the places. They're in my 30 tabs that are open. Every time I get on a call with someone from my team, okay, listen, there will be no shaming today about all my 50 tabs open and the other 40 that I just closed because I knew I was going to get on with you. So a lot of them are in open tabs, open docs, some spreadsheets, some organization. Most are in Asana, but also we have for our PR team, we just have an ongoing like a running document where we just try to capture all the stories and where they're at in terms of stage, how we talk to the customer, how we talk to a reporter, like where are we? in that stage to try and keep track of all the details.
Love that. Okay. And do you, in this, and that I am very type B, so this is speaking my language of the millions of tabs and the creative brain that's hopping from one thing to the next. One quick side note, I probably have mentioned this on the show before, but I swear by a tool called OneTab. They are not sponsoring. If you want to sponsor, come on. But OneTab, it's like a Chrome extension, and it can collapse all of your open tabs into a vertical list where then it stays forever. So you can go back and search and find things, but you can clean it up right away if you're sharing your screen and there's no tabs.
Oh, that is nice.
It's beautiful.
My problem is if I don't see it, if the tab isn't there, like I'm really saying, hey, did you forget about me? Yeah. I'm Stephanie, then I'm going to forget about it.
Yep. Your problem is you won't go back to the tab. I hear that. But with all of these stories, how do you decide? Maybe you just know and you just have this gut instinct, but how do you decide what is the story you need to move to the top of the pile and get in front of people ASAP?
There are a number of things that I think about when we've got a customer who comes to us and says, hey, I am having so much success. I love this product so much. Or maybe I've been in a beta program and now I want to talk about it in partnership with 6 Sense. We think about a couple of things. First of all, how timely is this? Is this a situation where like we have a moment in time now? Great. That is going to jump to the top of those. Sometimes things are going on at the customer side where they've committed and they're in, they want to do this, but they need to wait for a little bit. We'll schedule that out. Sometimes if you're leading up to a big launch or something that's coming up, like in, let's say it's 2 quarters out, but you want to get things in place now to release and publish and launch 2 quarters out, we'll work with folks. Reporters these days, no longer can you send a press release out on a Tuesday and expect coverage that week. Nope, those days are gone. Shrinking newsrooms don't just mean fewer reporters. They mean fewer people copy editing, fewer people working on the images to support all the content, like just fewer people across the board. So it takes more time to publish. So you've got to work out, I don't know, at least 4 to 6 weeks. The bigger the story, the longer the lead time, especially with like tier 1 media. And so we'll put things in place. We'll nurture stories or reporters. If you want to have podcasts, great. We're going to record a bunch of podcasts and ask to schedule them 2 quarters out. It depends on a few different variables.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And the timeliness makes sense. And who knew it took, you did, but 4 to 6 plus weeks now, if you were expecting to get coverage, that's crazy and very key to know for us. Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Long lead time.
You mentioned press release. I also want to go into the different channels because you talked about podcasts, like big media, et cetera. So we'll get into that. Okay. But for press releases, so when some people think PR, they think literally press releases, right? Oh, we're going to get some PR on that. Let's publish a press release on this.
Do a PR.
Yes. So what is your take? What really is PR, right? And to me, it sounds like from what you're saying, it's all about the story, which I love. And then when is it actually valuable to publish a press release?
Oh, good questions. So I was at this media summit last month, I think. Time flies. And Eleanor Hawkins was there from Axios, and she talked about this concept of PR communicators. We hunt where the ducks are. Oh gosh, I hope I got the wording right. We hunt where the ducks are, meaning we look to like, where is the audience? And our audience isn't only reading Wall Street Journal. They aren't only listening to this one podcast. They aren't only on LinkedIn. They aren't only going to this one big event. They are many places. And so we need to be telling stories in those many places. It's really hard to do. Most PR teams are understaffed. And so you really need to prioritize. I tend to think about what are the big stories that we want to tell? Where are the audiences that we want to reach? And then how are we going to pitch those out? Which customer are we going to take to those reporters with us or those podcasts or whatever it is? What is the angle for that specific audience, for that specific reporter, or for that specific podcast host? And how do we make that happen? It's not as easy as it used to be, but that's how you make the impact.
So I love that everything is centered around stories, it seems. And if I'm wrong in that, call me out. But I I feel like I've definitely done this, so shame on me, where you have a product launch coming out or you want to be involved in conversations around XYZ. AI is big right now. Right? Everyone wants to be an AI conversation, all tech companies. But okay, like we go to our PR team, our PR agency, and okay, how do we get in on this conversation? Where am I going wrong there? Why is that the wrong way to go about it? And how would you address that?
So there's a few things come to mind. First, it's really hard to get attention about AI right now because AI, everything is just AI. Every company has some sort of AI-ness that they want to talk about. So it's really hard to break through that noise. Stories can sell though. And when I think about some of the product launches or let's say a new partnership, there are announcements to be made. And the first thing everyone thinks about is we have an announcement. Great, let's do a PR. Yeah. Meaning let's do a press release to make the announcement. This is how announcements happen. Yeah. If you can take that announcement and put a story around it, you are far more likely to actually compel someone to pay attention. And it's not always easy. Sometimes there's not a great story. Sometimes it really is just an announcement. But the closer to a story you can tell with characters, with a little bit of tension, the more likely first you're going to grab attention of a reporter or someone who's going to write about it. And then ultimately it's the audience. You want to compel them to know or think or do something. Stories do that. Stories compel.
So you're making me think right now, like about all the different things we have to announce at Daxtra, like the company I work for. So if let's say and this is not happening, don't read between the lines, anyone, but if there is an acquisition or a new partnership or things like that, there's no client or customer story to highlight and bring to life. Because you're making me think of movies, right? Like characters. So you can say like this CEO met with this CEO at over dinner one day in Philadelphia, and if you make it a story and add, not that boring, but if you add more elements to it, to the press release or the announcement, wherever that is, do you think that is that where you would begin, or am I way off and this is not my forte?
No, yeah. Like it's what you talked about there was the people behind the story, the people behind the announcement. Yeah. Data stories do really well. People stories do even better. Okay. So I think I have long had the belief that people do business with people they know and trust. And so if through your announcement or through your stories, if you can help people know and trust your leaders, your sellers, your customer success, like the people in the business, that reflects on the organization. And they're more likely to trust and buy. But they got to know, like, and trust first. Usually.
Yeah, I love that. To make sure I didn't overtalk you said data stories do well. And is it people stories that do even better?
Yes.
People, okay.
Stories do even better.
It's so true. I always try to get more of the human side of things in everything we're doing, because that's what gets people intrigued, right? And sucks them in. Even I know our CEO was presenting at a conference earlier this year, and I added the first slide, a picture of him with his daughter at her wedding. And that was like, because that had just happened. I knew that was really like on him. He's a family guy and it meant so much. It was his only daughter. Now she's married. So I put that in and it was a surprise for him. It was the about me slide, and that connected him to the audience instantly because they were like, they saw his truth. He is a family guy, spoke to him, and they saw his reaction, his authentic face, like seeing that picture. So the whole audience was like, oh, gets that off to a good start. If you can pull on those strings, I need more moments like that in everyday marketing.
Absolutely. When an executive or someone takes a stage, the faster you can get to resonance, the more they're able to hear the rest of your presentation, because they're trying to think, okay, you're on this stage, you want my attention. Have you earned my attention? I could be thinking about my task list right now, that meeting I'm going to ruminate about, the meeting that I'm going to have that I'm going to preemptively ruminate about. Or I could listen to you and get your saying, but tell me why I should pay attention to you. The quicker that you can resonate with them and say, hey, I'm like you, and this is something personal about me, you immediately have their attention and just got to keep it.
For those of us who don't have an abundance of stories to work with, where do you recommend people start? What can they work with if they don't have a ton coming their way? Where do they create those stories?
Stories are usually there. Sometimes you have to work a little harder to get them. If you have happy customers, you have stories to tell. Or if you have happy employees, you have stories to tell. I worked with this manufacturer many years ago, and walking through their factory with the owner and CEO, he was telling me about the third generation workers in the manufacturing plant. The young woman over here who is first generation college student because of her work to the company. Everywhere he pointed, every machine station we walked up to was abundant with stories, people stories. And they had not told any of those stories outside of the organization. And they had all these customer stories too, but it was just like fertile ground for all these stories. I will never forget that walk through that plant because there was just story opportunities everywhere. So sometimes they just jump out at you, but sometimes you do have to work a little bit harder. And usually if you have happy customers or happy employees, they want to talk about their experience.
That story. If we had $1 for every time we say the word story on this episode, that reminds me though of the show Undercover Boss. The boss comes in and I love it. It's so cute. It's just heartwarming. It's just what we're coming to, right? Where can you bring heart to the situation? So maybe it's data and or heart. The story says the pace, like where can you connect with people? So coming back to the channels that you've mentioned, so podcasts and press releases sometimes as a start, what channels do you work with? Or is there any kind of trends that you're seeing that are picking up channel-wise or distribution, promotion of these stories versus any that are just no longer something on your radar?
I would say traditional media is always going to be valuable. Databricks today recently had their big fundraise and they got great coverage in tier one media. That's really important still. But I think what we're seeing now is the emergence of non-traditional media. Podcasts are playing a big role. They played a big role in the election. Things like social media. We're B2B, so our audience is on LinkedIn, so we're on LinkedIn. Our executives, they're on LinkedIn. Thought leaders.
Yeah.
I think there is still a ton of value in having content on your site. That landscape is changing with AI summaries across the different search channels that we have now. But I think for me and my team, what it means is that we have to really be up on the technology as ChatGPT and SearchGPT or name your search engine evolves and what they're looking at for those signals to inform the summaries. As that evolves, we have to stay abreast of that. We have to be on top of that. Reddit is like having a comeback because Reddit is seen as an influential source. So it is really interesting. Like you've got to stay up on these trends, but we're looking at the non-traditional things. That does not mean that I'm going to be on Reddit tomorrow. However, I'm paying attention to it.
Yeah.
I'm paying attention to the non-traditional media sources that either our audience deems important or the way the channels and places that our audience information from, they deem important.
Yeah. I don't want to go down a Reddit hole, but that's a tongue twister. I was never a Reddit user, but I find myself lately when it's always in the top of the search results when I search something and like, you know what, that's where I'm going to find legit answers, legit reviews. So I go there and I'm not a big Reddit user, but I read all of my actual reviews on there for sure. I know in the past when I have dabbled with Reddit, again, this will be the last thing on Reddit, I promise, is I posted because there was a question about my company at the time and I answered it, but because I was a newbie, it like quarantined me and didn't let me answer. And another time someone called me out and they're like, oh, it's funny. You just started an account yesterday. And like people call you out on there. So I've Reddit shamed 100% I was. It's like, these are not my people. But have you had any success there from a PR perspective? Do you have like ways to infiltrate and get like authentic people posting, or have you done that at all?
Not in like at least a decade. I remember when Reddit first came out and we had the company I was at, we had internally and externally, we had some product evangelists. And so they were just naturally very active in Reddit. So I was thankful if I surfaced conversations, they were in there chatting away. But to your point, it's got to be authentic. I think it's like that on any channel. any social channel, but Reddit in particular, they are quick to call you out.
Yes, yeah. You got to have thick skin on Reddit.
Yeah, you learn that the hard way.
I love that, though. The evangelist, that's probably key there. Do you also, or does your team at all work with execs on their comms and the stories they're telling?
We do. We work with our many executives, subject matter experts, or just thought leaders around the company to help them get their messages out. It's actually work that I love to do.
Yeah, it's like coaching, right? Do you have coaching sessions with them at all to curate different talk tracks, or how does that work?
We call them story mining calls,
Oh,
where we want to hear what's top of mind for you right now. What messages or stories do you want to be telling? Where's the white space? What's not being talked about right now? Sometimes we take ideas to them. Hey, this thing over here is becoming a trend. What do you think about that? Do you have an opinion? Do you have a strong opinion? We want to pressure test ideas and thoughts, because what we don't want to do is go to market with a generic message or story. That's not of value. But if we can poke around and see where there's either a strong opinion, maybe an unexpected opinion or perspective on something, and there's a story there that we can tell, man, we want to help bring that story alive. We'll find the right channel. We'll find the right place for that.
yeah. How often do you recommend story mining with different individuals or with the same person? How frequent?
It's a good question. For me, it varies. I try to think about a couple different things. There are some executives where we have a regular cadence. Maybe it's monthly. We have standing time with. So either we're taking ideas or content opportunities, something to them, and we want their reaction to that. We want to know, hey, we've got these 5 podcasts we're looking at. Do you love or hate any? Or these are the topics we're going to explore for you over the coming month. Like, tell us what you think about this. Give us the input so that we can shape something to bring back to you. Yeah. Or we're just going to them and asking the question, what stories do you want to tell right now? What's top of mind? What's keeping you up at night? You just got to get out into the world. Let us help you put some words to that story and get it out there. So sometimes it's a regular cadence. Sometimes there are moments in time. Maybe it's, right now we're in prediction season, or maybe it's, there's an upcoming launch. But having a regular cadence, I think, helps too, because I find that some executives need to know, okay, I need to start thinking about this because in 3 weeks or 2 weeks, whatever it is, we're going to have this conversation. So I need to formulate my ideas and let it simmer for a little bit.
Yeah.
It takes practice too.
I love that. Do you have any go-to questions that you ask during story mining?
I like to just start with, what's on your mind?
What's on your mind? Yeah.
But the biggest, I would say that my most frequently asked question is, tell me more about that.
Oh.
I love that question. There was a book, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name of it, but it's all about great questions. That was one of them. Just tell me more about that.
Yeah. Just to get them to keep stop.
Yeah. Keep it coming.
Oh, I need to get better at that. I think I typically ask questions and I don't put like a prompt in conversations, and it just doesn't, it'll either fizzle out or we'll move on to the next thing too quickly. I didn't get enough information. I need to pause and say, tell me more about that more, even probably on the show. So tell me if I should be doing that with you right now. I love that one.
You've been asking good questions.
Thank you. Speaking of story mining, I love that term, by the way. You were telling me before we turned the mics on that you had sessions back when you owned your own business, which we could also go into, where you would speak with founders and CEOs and hold, what was it, pick my brain sessions, where they could just book time on your calendar and pick your brain. So I love that. Can you tell us why you did that and what you got out of it? That would be wonderful.
Sure. I love talking about this. So this was back in a time where a lot of people were pushing back on a request. Hey, can I buy you coffee and pick your brain a little bit? Can I take you to lunch and pick your brain a little bit? No, sorry, my thoughts and expertise and wisdom is worth more than a cup of coffee. And you have to pay for it. And my perspective was, I am not going to just take all of this knowledge and wisdom and experience that I've been fortunate to gather and curate over the course of my career. I'm not going to just take it to my grave with me. That stinks. I'm going to share it. And so I put up a page on my website, just called Pick My Brain, a little Calendly link. And every week I opened 3 30-minute sessions, and they turned out to be the most delightful 30-minute sessions of my entire week. Every single week, without fail. I don't know how many hundreds of calls I did. I heard back from many of the founders or entrepreneurs that they took the advice or they experimented here, they tried that and they had great results, or they learned something that they're going to iterate on for next time. And so it felt really good to bring value in that way in such a short amount of time too. But oh my gosh, to be honest, eventually it just became a purely selfish endeavor because they were so much fun for me.
Yeah.
So much fun to almost to test, can I come up with anything worth sharing in 30 minutes? Can you tell me a little bit about your business, your challenge that you're having right now? And can I deliver some value in 30 minutes? And so for me, I felt like it helped me stay on my toes.
Yeah.
Yeah, stay sharp.
I love that. It's similar to some companies, they don't want anybody doing consulting on the side. And it's common, like they want your dedicated attention, which I get, I understand that. But as long as it's not interfering with your core work, there's so much value in having these consulting conversations because new questions arise, new opportunities that you can bring back to your core company. So those conversations remind me of that benefit where you're cross-pollinating and getting new wires connecting in your brain. And
yeah, there's a platform out there. I forget what it's called right now, but it's basically, it enables employee mentoring or volunteerism based on career craft. I could go into the platform and say, I've got these marketing skills, and companies it's like a place like a matchmaker. So companies on the other side, maybe they're, early stage startups, maybe they're in developing countries where they don't have these resources. They can go in and say, I need a mentor in LinkedIn ads.
Oh, so
and they
cool.
can find someone to just get these little mentoring sessions. It's a way of giving back.
Yeah, I love that. If you think of the name of that company, I'd love to put it in show notes too. That sounds like such a cool community. Same with that book, the questions book. That would be awesome too. Okay, 2 things. I have 2 more questions if you can bear with me for a few more minutes. 1, what is top of mind for you as we head into 2025? What's just like your game? You can't share your whole game plan with us, obviously, but what's just top of mind for you going into the new year and planning?
I feel like for me, our world in PR and to some degree in B2B tech, there's always something going to happen in a year that we can't predict in January 1. Sometimes there's many things that are going to happen that we can't predict.
Few years,
Right. I think 2020 proved that one. I enter each year with an idea of, okay, these are the big things we're going to do. These are the big stories we want to tell. As I look throughout the year, the things that we want to do in the first half have a little bit more fidelity in the back half. But some things, if you want to do a tier 1 big media story, you're planning 12 months out. And so we're looking at what are the stories that we want to tell? What are the different opportunities and moments in time that we want to take advantage of? And then what do we want to stay open to? There's always, like I said, those non-traditional media opportunities, whether it's an event, a podcast, maybe it's if verticals are important, maybe it's a great vertical story that we want to pitch out broadly. We want to stay open so that we can be opportunistic. So we plan for a lot of things, but not everything. Because I want to stay flexible and be able to, take advantage of a moment in time.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me because I love the idea. I feel like that's how we should approach life in general, right? Is have a game plan, but you gotta have some gaps in there because things are going to change and shift. But when you're talking about 12 months for a tier 1 media, how do you even plan that far ahead? To me, I'd just be scared the story is so stale by then. Like, how do you keep it fresh? Or pick a fresh story.
Not going to take 12 months. But let's say if you have a leader that you want to do a showcase story on, you're probably working with a reporter over the course of that many months, of anywhere from 6 to 12 months, so that they have very varying opportunities to really get to know that leader or a leadership team or a company. For companies that are, let's say, so the manufacturing company that I mentioned, they were doing a massive business pivot. They were primarily B2B, selling to developers and construction companies, and they were pivoting to C, to be placed on shelves in Home Depot and Lowe's. And this was part of their M&A strategy. So we worked the 18 months out on the rebrand, on the new positioning, on all the new storytelling. They ultimately land some really big stories so that they could get or earn attention from the companies that they wanted to acquire them. They were acquired 12 months earlier than they expected to.
Yeah, right. Makes sense for a big foundational, like a pillar story.
Stories take a lot of time.
So cool. Thank you for diving into that.
Yeah.
My last question for you today, Gina, and I feel like I need follow-ups because there's so many the areas we can go deeper into. But if you could go back 20 years ago and to talk to yourself just starting out in the world of marketing, PR, before you even got into B2B, what would you tell yourself knowing all that you've learned in your career so far?
It feels like it's a theme today. I would say to stay curious, to stay open-minded, to say yes. I think for me early in my career, I was hesitant to say yes to things, or I questioned things. Oh, they're ruminating. Did I do the right thing there? Did I make that right move? When friends or colleagues were getting their MBA, and I sat and I questioned, do I want an MBA? Do I want an MBA? And so I worked on the agency side. And one of my mentors told me, on the agency side, an MBA is not going to be that valuable. If you want to go work for Kellogg or a big CPG company, go get your MBA. But if you want to stay agency side, I'm not sure that's going to pay out for you. And so I think being curious and open-minded, looking back, is easy to see, oh, that served me well.
Yeah.
But in the moment, it's really hard.
Yeah.
Because I think my younger self wanted to be so certain every time I made those decisions.
Yeah. Fear of messing up, right?
Yeah. And also just, I think going through college, I hope the advice given to young college students today is a little bit different. But I remember just hearing like your career should look like, a linear trajectory up and to the right.
Yeah.
Not like the bowl of spaghetti like mine does. So I think that's what led to a lot of the, am I doing this right? I don't know if I'm doing this right. Even when I started my own business, I went to my first meeting with the CEO of that manufacturer. I had nothing. I had no business name. I did have an idea, but I had no business cards. I had no website. And I was thinking like the agency person in me was like, I have no credentials. I have 0 credentials to show up in this meeting. And my friend was like, I'm going to tell you something I hear you say is people do business with people they know and trust. Just let them get to you. You don't need a fancy business card. You don't need a website. And so I think just saying yes more and figuring it out. I'd always figured it out.
It's amazing. I think also when you talk about the linear path, because you're scared of being a squiggly line and having the bowl of spaghetti, though I love spaghetti. I think I'm one of the very, very few marketers that has had just like the this, then this, like you follow that path. And I bet if I was to unpack this in a therapy session, that it would be because I was scared, right? Of not following that path. And okay, if I do this, then it'll set me back. And then I go down here. And like in hindsight, I was totally scared of spaghetti.
Isn't that interesting? Why are we afraid of zigging and zagging instead of moving up and up? It is life. I know.
Guys, maybe next year I'll be a scuba instructor. Who knows? So
that's a big zag.
We'll see, but that would be a good story. Yeah, we came full circle there. Gina, thank you so much for sharing just a tiny piece of your wisdom with us today on PR, comms, marketing, your career path. It's been just enlightening. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I could talk. I wanted to ask you, tell me more about your scuba diving lesson business, but
right. Well, probably never actually. I get really bad seasickness, but who knows? All right. Thank you so much, Gina. For those who would love to connect with you or maybe schedule a Pick My Brain session, if you bring those back, where should they reach out to you?
LinkedIn is probably the best place to do that. I'm easy to find.
Yeah. And she'll be in show notes, everyone. Definitely connect with her. Follow her if you are not already, because you are in for a treat.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening. If you liked the episode, share with a friend, rate us, review. It helps us get in front of more folks. So thank you and happy holidays if you're listening to this in the season. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.